So we have a budget committee. I have been chairing that this year, and I think that the budget committee wants to yield to the body of the Quorum Court at this point. So I don't want this, I'm not viewing this as a budget committee meeting, but as the Quorum Court itself discussing the budget. So I yield the floor to Clerk Cotton.
So do we want to start at the top and go through everything that we've already said was okay as far as the budget committee? Okay. Okay. Does anyone have a copy of this? Be advised, there are some changes to
This is just one copy right here?
That's one copy.
We get to read that.
We're gonna have to read this out loud?
Happy budget time.
Well, this isn't passing the budget, all this is just working through the numbers.
Mr. Cotton, did I have the current one that my wife picked up those days?
Yes.
Okay.
You have the most current. Now, there are a few things that will change as we go through, but the top sheet on that is the 1,000. And so we'll just go through it as quickly as we can. County judge's budget was held back to determine what grants and aid in the amount of $6,000 was. And we did find what that paid, and it was some money that we owed the city. We have yet to determine why it came out of the county judge's budget, but that's what that grants and aid for. For the budget of next year, we scratched that because we don't need that. And so the county judge's budget came in at $88,671.
600 and how much, Mr. Cotton?
$88,671. County clerk's budget came in at $206,277. And stop me if you have any questions on.
Before you get any further, you said the grants and aid line under the judges is gonna be
Is
scratched. Okay,
That is correct.
all right, thank you. That was one of my questions.
Do you have another copy?
Pardon?
Do you have another copy?
Oh, yeah. This one's the other one. Treasurer's budget, $113,835. There's a small change from the budget committee meeting of addition of $500 for advertising to the treasurer's budget, that $500 only.
What's the total on that, please?
The total is 113,835.
And that was built in because she didn't have, that.
She had she was paying out of her own pocket for advertising, and so we added $500 to it.
Mr. Cotton, I'm sorry to ask this, but could you give me the first two numbers? I just got my computer up. Was it $93,774
What
for the
from-
office of the county judge?
No,
88,671.
I subtracted $5,000 from that.
88,671.
The clerk's budget was $206,277. And then the treasurer you just got. The tax collector is $215,414. That is paying the sheriff half of his salary out of the tax collector's budget. The assessor's budget, $219,844. Board of Equalization, $2,500.
Could you back up to the assessor, please? Sorry.
Assessor was $219,844.
Okay, thank you.
Board of Equalization, $2,500. Quorum Court, $41,077. Elections, $96,445. Courtroom Annex, $1,500. Keep this room running. Grants and aid. This was the first question that we had last week. Grants and aid was where the monies for the jail and some monies for the, Civic Center had already been built in. We just didn't really realize that this is where that money was, that this money that was sent in grants and aid had already been earmarked for those couple of items and a few other things. And later on, when we talk about anticipated, transfers, we'll come back to this grants and aid, but, this $284,985.75 is the same as last year's budget for grants and aid. And we will talk about where all that money's gonna go. County Health, $17,850. The Sheriff's Department, what?
Could you repeat what you just said? County Health,
County Health,
17,850.
Yes, that's what.
Mhm.
Thank you.
is that what it was?
Yeah, that's right.
The Sheriff's Department, $492,024. Take into consideration that every one of these budgets includes the 2% raise for employees. Those are figured in all of these totals, a 2% raise. Circuit Court First Division, $82.33, and which is a drop in theirs. We're only, funding one person, a part-time person out of that. Circuit, Court Division 2, this was one of those that I asked, the Budget Committee to hold till I figured out what these monies were being spent for. Those monies, this is a juvenile court, and it's intended for the juvenile intake officer and, the juvenile probation officer, and I asked that we approve the budget's the same as last year with the exception of $6 for some additional stamps, or increase in stamps.
So that's 17,850.
$17,853.78. Division 3, $500 for supplies. Division 4, $9,400. And this is because some jury costs comes out of Division 4. He's our administrative judge, so he's responsible for paying jurors.
So mine's blank. All of mine is so the majority of that is for the jurors, Mr. Cotton? None of my lines are filled out, that's
I'm
what
sorry.
asking. Oh, that's
Well,
okay.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's right, I see it here.
Yeah, 7,500
Okay,
for
I
the
see it,
juror.
sorry, I was spelling it right.
Division 5 is $500 for supplies. Probation officer. Total budget $64,854. Small increase due to increase in salary. All right, district court. This is another one that I asked to place on hold last week until I could take a look at it, because I did not understand why there was a request for $12,000 in retirement matching. Well, to get to the bottom of that is we're paying retirement on Mr. Patterson for retirement that we didn't pay when he was actually a district judge. And so we're having to now pay into his retirement fund when in fact we didn't do it previously. So 6,000 of that is for Mr. Patterson's retirement, and the rest I got down a little bit. And so the total budget for district court salaries is $42,819, which is about $5,000 less. And so the overall budget for district court is $57,219, which I think is probably as little as we can get by with. Now, to answer your question, we pay half of everything on this page with the exception of the part-time help. And the part-time person that works for the district court, we pay her full salary, because the city does not intend to pay any of the salary of the part-time person.
And they used to, but they don't anymore.
Yeah, before my time, I know it right now.
Yeah, they used
don't
to
want it.
pay, they used to pay part of it, cause that was a full-time position.
Yeah.
And they quit, and then we had to get down to 3 days a week, cause that's all we could afford.
Right. And we do pay minimum, well, we pay just a shade over minimum for those 3 days.
Okay.
$12.48, which is not a lot.
No.
All right, prosecuting attorney is back down to $70,716. I took the salary of the part-time person back to part-time, where when we talked about it in the budget hearings, we had that person knocked up to full-time. And so it's back down, and so the budget for the prosecuting attorney is now $70,716.
May I address that budget?
Certainly.
Chad, Ms. Cruz had asked for an increase in the labor, and the committee is, I don't want to use the word concerned, but I will tell you that we want to look at that carryover number in the anticipated for the general fund. And if that anticipated number does pan out, then what the quorum court will do is revisit that request for the additional funding for, is it full-time or is it more than part-time that she's asking for?
Full-time, yeah.
So, based on the numbers we have, it's possible that that could have been granted, but the carryover of $1 million+ is something that we're really needing to see happen once they do the reconciliations and all the turnbacks and all that stuff. So we need to see that, and I think the quorum court should look at that after the second or third week of January to make sure that indeed that number is or is not what we expected it to be. And if it is what we expected it to be, then if you would come back to the quorum court, we would consider, you know what I'm saying, the full-time. That is what the committee agreed on, correct? Jason, Michelle, Ms. Hitchie.
I appreciate it, because I really appreciate the consideration and that you put some thought into it. I really do. It's important. We made the request because number one, she's a very good employee. And number two, just having coverage is important, that we're able to stay open. With 1.5 people, sometimes it's a little bit problematic just to remain open. But I appreciate the request. Do you think, is there a time frame that you would like to see me come back, or?
Well, as soon as we reconcile the general fund in January, then we'll look at what she's saying, that the carryover is gonna be $1,071,519. $1,071,519. I've not seen that kind of carryover in the few years I've been on here, so there is some concern that it may not be that rich. If it is, then what I would do is I would come back,
February maybe?
probably February, cause it'd take
Well,
that,
we
it'd
should
take
know
that much
something by
time.
then.
But if it's, to address the JPs, if we're significantly under, then we'll have to, then the reverse would be happening, in that we would be looking at these budgets that are funded out of this general fund, and I hope that's not the case, but, we've seen the budget increase 6 and 7% year over year over the last 3 or so years that I've seen, and, you know, that is hyperbolic, and I don't know, at some point that probably cannot continue. I'm done.
I do appreciate the consideration, and I know taking on additional payroll expense is always a big deal because it's a recurring thing, so I appreciate everyone thinking about it.
Public defender, 5990, which is the same as his was. The coroner, as we discussed, we had talked about tabling that. I removed the $6,000 contract labor, and I have a budget now of $26,917. Once again, the coroner can come back to us at a later date. Office of Emergency Management. Total budget of $71,421. And we did discuss that in budget hearings and approved the radios at $10,000.
And that's, so there's a 22% increase year over year. The previous year, their budget was around 58,000. This year's budget is 58, next year would be 71. And the reason for that, Mr. Cotton, the 22% increase?
Was $10,000 that they're requesting for radios. Now, that's not new radios. That actually is contract repair of radios, or the possibility of having to purchase a radio of one lost, dropped in the water, or anything else. And so they're asking for $10,000 to be in their budget for their radios, for their system that they're using for
So was the radios not included in OEM?
So
when
I
we
think-
done all the new radios?
I think the build out of the county safety communication system did include the purchasing of radios, but I think that those radios were for law enforcement and for fire,
Only?
for the fire departments. I don't recall them being part of the 911 system, but we'd have to look at the notes on that, but that is a question. Does anybody else remember that?
I think we paid them out of the OEM, the reason it's going back
Sorry.
to repair, we paid the radios out of OEM. So that's just for repair, if something happens to them, you know, the new ones we got, if something happened,
So they've got new ones under what we did then?
yeah.
She's
It'd be
part
on
of the,
OEM.
okay.
They went through her office, is what it
Okay.
was.
This money is not to purchase any radios right now.
It's just, okay,
It's just-
fix them if they needed it, okay.
On that note, I think it would be good for somebody to come back before the quorum court and address how expeditious, how well we have spent the $750,000 that was put toward the countywide safety communication system. I'm kind of curious how that's working, you know, because we've nobody's addressed this, so maybe it would be good
It
for us.
still ain't all, they've got everything in the sheriff's office, and it still ain't all switched over yet, they're that close to having every, it took them all this time to get all the radios and stuff in, they just send a little at a time.
So not really germane to this, but it's still something next year, I think we should look at.
Veteran service, $18,564, pretty much stationary,
Before we go any further,
okay?
the Office of Emergency Management, is that a full-time position?
Yes, it is.
And it's largely funded outside the county.
The state pays half of the salary.
She's on call 24/7. So if there's a house fire or anything like that, any kind of emergency, she has to be on call.
Well, I knew she was
Full-time.
housed in the Civic Center a long time, and for some reason, I was wondering if, for the county, or how that worked, I'm not sure.
I think that was a good effort to cross-function personnel so that there was someone there at the Civic Center, but
She
because
ran it before.
her job was OEM, not that, that couldn't be her primary focus. And so that's why she's not there now. We're looking at understaffing for that,
Did the county ever pay half of that,
half of,
her salary?
Mhm.
County pays half, state pays half.
Okay.
Veteran service, $18,564. Extension office, $39,300. Looks the same as it has been. Airport, $7,075, once again, same budget. And that concludes the 1,000.
I would like to point out that that's a 7% increase year over year. But it should be noted that elections is up significantly because there is a general election coming up, and you should see, like, 23 was only $7,700 this budget for this year. It's close to $100,000 for next year, so you take that out, I think the budget, in fact, I will just put that number in here real quick and we'll see what that looked like.
Who is our veteran?
It's only a 3% increase, which is almost right in line with, the 2% budget increase for personnel, so that's not a large increase, except for the, elections, which has
We can't
seen
control,
1,000% increase, which we can't control.
we can't control that.
So I personally think that the general fund, the budget for general fund is in line with probably what it should be.
Do you have a question?
I was wondering who our veterans service officer is.
Larry Johns. He's actually,
He works 1 day a week, that way.
Okay. We ready to move on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, recycling revenue fund. As available at 90% of $18,401. They're asking for a budget of $18,000.
Jeff, you have a pile of those for me. I have the general fund, but I don't have. Thanks, sir.
Next, Civic Center. Civic Center's budget request is $92,322. The Civic Center is projected to, as an income of $39,000, which leaves it $56,000 short. We have previously, as I said before, this grants and aid monies that Civic Center's money was hidden inside that grants and aid budget line item. And so if you add 56,000 out of the grants and aid, gives us the money to budget or to appropriate for the budget of $92,322. I personally feel that their revenues will be higher than the 22,000, but, you know, that's to be seen.
2,000 or 39,000?
Do what now?
The anticipated income there, was
The
it 39,000 or 22,000?
The anticipated income is 39,500. 90% of that is $35,550. Should pass these out. Sorry. The stuff that I'm going off of will be found in this document. Well, I had enough. So I only have two more. Can y'all share on this particular document? Oh, you don't have to share, I don't know.
He's testing us.
Just to see if she's gonna cooperate. Now, I have a little cheat sheet that y'all don't have, and that is what the, what the grants and aid, that monies that we were talking about before, what we can use it for, and the anticipated transfer of funds out of grants and aid into other funds. And so, the Civic Center, anticipate from the Civic Center, from the 0116 grants and aid would be $56,772 to cover the requested budget.
So, do you have a sum of the grants and aid? Because I have 284,985.
Yes.
So do you have a sum,
What we're gonna use out of it?
all of grants and aid, that fund? Because that will affect the bottom line here, what I was quoting, I wasn't thinking about.
I'll need that back.
Yes, sir.
Moving on to road department. County roads has a 90% available of $2,285,955. Their requested budget is the roads, not counting motor fuel tax, is $2,105,918. And when you add road, motor fuel tax of $92,081, brings it to a grand total of $2,197,999, which you should see on your sheet. That is still close to 100,000 below their anticipated income for the year. The next is the Treasurer's Automation Fund, which has $71,000 available for anticipated income And her budgeted amount is $15,700, way below the anticipated dollar figure. The next is the tax collector, which is the fund that we were talking about before was paid. We've revised the income this year was $66,000. She had, anticipated a $5,000 in there, so we have upped that to $40,000 to cover the budget, requested by the tax collector for this fund, which is $34,064. Now, I may be back here with the hat in hand, but this year, if it's any indication, we will be able to, cover the cost of that fund with, $40,000 anticipated income. And I'm sorry that the treasurer's not here to speak to that particular one. The next is the Circuit Court Automation Fund. Available $30,577, and I'm asking for $28,000. Now, this year we didn't use near that much, but I wasn't here for a whole year, so next year I'm gonna use a little more of that to try to do a few things that needs to be done in the office. The next is the District Court Automation Fund. I asked that this not be approved at our budget meeting and to look into it. And sure enough, I was able to bring that down some. Now, I believe that $5,128 is a bare minimum we need for that fund, because that pays for the software that they use at the district court. That's half. It went up a little bit per month, and so Wayne and
So you'll pull 2,000 out of
pull
grants
2,000
grants and aid?
pull 2,000 out of grants and aid to bring that up to 5,166, which covers.
Is that what this number is right here, at 2,000?
Yes.
The Fund
That is
3028?
That is correct.
This is Fund 303. Oh, I see it, right, okay, I got it.
Okay. Assessor's Relief Tax Fund. If I said I knew what that was, I'd be lying, cause I really don't. But the assessor says that that's the minimum he needs. I went over, we sat down and we brought it down to within what anticipated income was for that particular fund.
There's only about $900 difference there, right?
Right.
Between anticipated and need.
That is correct. And so we brought the need down to $11,385.
I shouldn't ask here, but what is that fund?
That's what I just said. If I said what it was, I'd be lying, cause I don't know. All I was determined was that the assessor and I went through that to try to get it down to within anticipated income. And of course, the assessor's not the one that said he didn't have a cut on this, is it?
Looking at you, I don't know.
Well, you said there was somebody told you that they didn't have a cut.
I deny talking to you about anything if it says. I disavow this conversation.
All right, moving on, Clerk's Automation Fund, available $27,098, I'm requesting $27,000. This fund is where we pay our computer systems out of. our BIS, the things we record on, and then the system we use to pay payroll. So that's, those monies are paying that, and I'm asking for basically the bare minimum on that. County library, once again, very flush. And so they're asking for over 100,000 less than their anticipated income for the year.
I know that that's an administrative board that controls those funds, correct? And so these monies accrue, do you know what the total fund is? Is that something that only they know?
I do not know. I do not have access to that information. Solid waste, sales tax fund. Once again, we're $150,000 less than the anticipated income for the year. I did not go through that one at all, just went with what they requested. E-waste is zero budget. We're letting e-waste monies just run its course and be no more. Appraisal fund, we did hold this. The $104,880 is the exact sum that we pay the company to do our property reappraisals. I have readjusted the actual anticipated income from the state of Arkansas. We know exactly how much we're gonna get is $84,385. And that means that we have to take out of the county general fund $32,000, and that's part of the money that's in the fund that you're looking at there, Wayne. So we're going to take monies.
And for the JPs, this is the group that goes and appraises property values that's hired by the appraiser's office. Is that right?
That is correct. And that is their bill for the year. So there's no getting around that dollar figure.
So they're billing forward?
Well, that's our anticipated, yes, for next year. And then the amount we're getting for the state is also based on the number of appraisals that they're going to do and how much we get per appraisal. Clerk's child support, I'm asking for a minimum dollar figure of that, of $1,500. And I probably won't spend that. Sheriff's Radio Fund. Sheriff's Radio Fund is asking for exactly what the anticipated income is for the year. The largest part of that is capital outlay of $72,000. Boating safety, just minimum dollar amount of $760. 911.
Would you like to address the JPs, the creative workaround that you did to help the jail with their budget by bringing monies out of 911?
Okay, there was monies in the 911 system that we were not fully utilizing. And that's to pay for one full-time dispatcher at the jail and 3 part-time dispatchers. Oh no, I'm sorry, 5 part-time dispatchers at the jail. And so we included in the salaries part of this, those part-time and 1 full-time dispatcher along with the full-time 911 coordinator. And so that took monies that the jail had actually earmarked to pay those particular jailers, dispatchers, and we took that out of their budget, which when we get to their budget, you'll see it's gone down considerably. And so we're paying for some of the dispatchers out of 911 rather than pulling that money from the jail.
And that relieved the general fund of about $100,000 to $150,000 burdened by doing that.
I thought we always done that because some of those,
We're supposed to be.
that
Yes,
it
we
wasn't
were
being
supposed to
done.
be.
Okay, yeah, because part of that, you know, they dispatch part-time and then they, you know, what I'm saying,
They
it
weren't
was.
figuring it in their budget right, so.
Right.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Sheriff's Adult Drug Control Fund. We talked about it and couldn't really find any place to cut this, so I've moved $2,000 over from that item over there, just to make the $6,200. And so their budget's only $6,200, but their anticipated income was only 48, so we moved a couple of $1,000 over.
What fund, I'm sorry, did you move that 2,000 from?
Fund 1,000, general fund.
Which is tied into that grants and aid.
Okay. What, I don't mean to be the strange one here, but what is it? What does that fund do?
The drug,
Yeah, the adult drug control.
well, I believe it's education for adult drug offenders, to try to assist them to get off of drugs and other things.
Okay.
Public Safety Fund, $2,475. That's anticipated income, that's what the sheriff asked for. Circuit Court Commissioner's Fee Fund. I only asked for $150 there. Fixing to get to jail, and then that's where we have some fun. All right, Assessor's Late Fund. Once again, I'm gonna have to go, we'd have to pull the assessor in here, cause I have no idea what he spends this $4,000 for. It says general supplies. But, he has $5,800 anticipated income. He's asked for a budget of $4,000. Building maintenance. This is the judge asked for $199,350. Anticipated income $247,432. So we're about $50,000 to the good on the building maintenance fund. The county jail. The first part of that is the jail maintenance fund. We discussed at length in the budget hearings concerning this jail maintenance. It's got $100,000 available, but we only budgeted for 16,000. And the reason we did that is that the jail keeps coming back and back for more money. And so we started them out low, and that way, if they need the funds. Now, with that said, myself and the treasurer are both going to review all, and I repeat, all invoices that come from the jail operations and building maintenance. There's some things that they've been taking out of operations that we feel can come out of this building maintenance fund. Repair a stove or do other things. And so we are going to, over this year, since we've cut their budget back by a considerable amount, we're going to go over every invoice to ensure that we're spending the jail's money wisely. And if we can, we will pull that out of building and maintenance rather than operations. So everything that we feel that we can correctly invoice as a maintenance function, we're going to take it out of this fund that's got $117,000.
Now, is this the fund, Mr. Cotton, that a percentage of that bond surplus goes into?
It's 10% of whatever's left over once the bond is serviced. So the bond is serviced, and then 10% of whatever's left over goes to this, and the rest goes into 3498.
So if we make 15%, 10 goes into maintenance and 5% goes into operations. And once again, that fund will be watched a little more closely. I pulled the binder that the stuff just has been put into. Never really looked at, never talked to the fund manager. And so, the first of the year, me and the fund manager are gonna have some words to try to figure out if there's anything that we're not doing right, or they're not doing right, or somebody's not doing right.
Yeah, cause I know when that was originally established, it was to help us eliminate, it was to take care of that building so that we didn't get in the same position that we got into with the old jail. There was never any money for repairs. Well, it started out as a new jail and everything was great, grand, and wonderful, but as time goes on, you know, we have to budget for that. We have to stick it back so that in the future, there's money there if these budgets are tight, because there is going to start being maintenance on that. I mean, other than, you know, just your everyday water line busted, whatever, but.
Well, we feel right now that we got about $100,000 of wiggle room in there to do those things.
Yeah, I would just like to see that protected as much as it could, just in the event that, like I said, if something major goes wrong down the road, the county has the money, because that was the intent of that fund, is to be able to save over the years, while that building was still new, that we had money stuck back, that we could do those major repairs, roofs or whatever.
And that's the reason that we're only gonna use legitimate costs.
Well, thank you guys for looking at that, because, yeah, that's.
Well, the jail apparently has been a thorn for a while, and so we're gonna look at it.
I think what they're doing is they're watching coding issues, and they're gonna be working with Ms. Hetty, as you have so oftentimes suggested that take place, and so they're gonna be doing that. It will help them.
Appreciate everybody's interest in
It will help them out.
Yeah, it will help them drastically.
All right, so jail operation. Jail operation requested budget is $585,746. As you can see, the anticipated income is, after 90%, is $363,000. Now, housing of prisoners, you notice, is now blank. We've moved that back over into the 1,000 fund.
That's because the auditors wanted it first to go into
Goes
that
in there
line item
first.
and then transfer back in.
Now, to reach our budget, this is where I need that thing,
Yes,
unless
sir.
you wanna read
No,
it
no, no,
off.
go ahead.
All right, how we're gonna get to the budget for the jail, which that we have in the grants and aid a built-in money for county operation, jail operations of $187,058. We'll also need to pull out of that $107,000 for reimbursement of housing prisoners. We'll also need to pull $35,000 to reach their budgeted amount. But if you notice, that budget figure is $115,000 less than last year's budgeted request. And so, the jail was assisted in their budget process as much as possible.
Thank you
So
guys very much.
we're down $115,000 from.
And that's a result of 911, which did have surpluses, being able to step in and help the, dispatch.
And some other things that was talked about in other meetings. So if you look at food, for instance, last year 30, this year we are asking for 26. We did, I don't remember, Jason, was it you that said nobody got any bread? Well, I went down there just to see if they got any bread. They were having bologna sandwiches. They did get bread one day anyway.
Eventually got it one day.
Well, that might have been because I was standing there. Okay, so the jail's budget is down considerably, and with the grants and aid fund and the fund from housing prisoners coughing up 35, we can cover their budget.
Can I ask a question while we're on
Sure.
jail? I know that previous term, there was a lot of discussion about separating those dispatchers onto their own office. There was talk about physical locations being separate from the jail, but then I think we're just moving forward with it as it is. But I haven't talked to, Mr. Ragland this year about the discussion that's going on at the state level to combine counties into a central 911 location. And there has been some discussion that it would not be combined into Searcy County. And
I went to Van Buren County, and then Gary did, and they're wanting us to come down there. But if we do, we're gonna lose all that.
That's what I'm saying.
They're gonna get the money.
so we need to aggressively fight for the right to dispatch from
Yeah.
Searcy County. And I don't know who's on that, but somebody should be on that, because it will ding our budget immensely. If we lose that turnback coming from the state for 911, it's gonna hurt us significantly. And I'm wondering who is on that? Who is Gary our advocate?
He keeps an eye on
So
that.
he's advocating for that. Should we talk to our senator and our state rep, maybe?
Well, nothing.
So,
They come up, but they were so often trying to do it, and they left us alone because we got it into the jail right now. But they're wanting it, they keep wanting it out of the jail,
I would,
and that's gonna hurt the jail when you start losing them.
I would suggest that, any of us JPs, I will try to remember to call, who's our rep?
Steve?
Yeah, Stephen. I will, try to remember to call him. We should call him and tell him about this, and, tell him that we want 911 to stay here in Searcy County. Or if we do combine it, that we combine it to Searcy County, because Van Buren County, and they got that lake and all kinds of wonderful things helping them down there.
Building brand new, 911 center down there too.
Yeah, they got a
It's
waffle,
nice.
they got a Waffle House and everything down there. We need to fight for,
Huddle house.
oh, it's a huddle house. We need to fight for those revenues that stay here. I'm not kidding, so I would suggest JP's call Stephen and maybe Missy on this one. 'Cause that's a big deal if we lose that.
Unpaved roads, budgeted for the same amount that we anticipate income, and that money will be used to pay off the project. And then that fund will go away.
Just Tomahawk.
It's Point Peter.
Next is mine again. I've got 28,000 of anticipated income of 28,352. This would be used this next year if we can to, turn some of our records into digital records. Tower accountability, no budget. Growing a healthy Searcy County, no budget. Civic Center Improvement Fund, no budget. Treasurer's Commission Fund, no budget. Law Library, 14,000. I don't know why, cause we can't ever use any of it. And then last is the sheriff's. He has a little bit of a fund that he can buy some office supplies out of. I put 2 line items, supplies and equipment of $500 each for $1,000. And he's got $5,000 to play with, so.
So these that we don't have a budget on, will we have a budget?
What budget is that we don't have
Well,
a
like
budget on?
the growing,
No,
No.
that's grant, pretty much.
okay,
There's-
so these we won't see, the
No,
civic center
you will not,
improvement.
you will not see
Okay.
anything in the future on
Okay.
those. I said no budget
It's,
or no budget,
Okay,
period. The Treasurer's Commission and the Act 1256, those are rolled back into anticipated. They're both line items on the anticipated income. So that monies that are in those are rolling back into the general fund.
I would like to recognize Clyde Fenton, who wants to talk to the JPs about the 4-H club, funding that. Sir, would you come up, please?
Okay. I'm not sure I came prepared to talk tonight, but, when I was with you before, I had brought you information on what it would cost to bring a halftime 4-H assistant. Historically, we've had one here in Searcy County, and I believe it was a real asset to us because we had a person that could focus on our youth at 4-H. As I recall, and I've slept a few nights since I presented this, I believe what it would cost the county was $11,000 a year to bring that assistant on. The state office would meet you halfway. They would provide the other 11,000. It's 11,250, I believe, is the actual number. But that's how they do it with an extra position like that. The way it's set up across the state is every county has an FCS agent and an ag agent, and then the additional agents, the county would have to come up with half of that. Now, the budget that was mentioned tonight, that covers some of our salaries. We're sort of, I don't know if this is an appropriate word, but convoluted in that the funding for extension comes from 3 different sources. There's some federal money that supports extension, then our state legislature supports extension, and then the county does as well. So, I mean, there's actually 3 sources of money. But we have 75 counties in the state, and every county so far continues to have a county office with at least an FCS agent and an ag agent. I went off on that, but that's what it would take. We would love for you guys to consider that. We do really believe it would be an asset to the county to have a person. Some of you probably recall Pam Canada was in that position for a long time. Actually, in talking to a former agent, at one time it was actually a 3/4 time position. It was 30 hours a week. We're not asking for that at this point. We'd like, if you felt that you could afford to, we would like to try the half-time and hopefully see fruit from that. And if we needed to revisit in a year or two and up the time, or convert that to a 4-H agent if we felt it was a real asset to the county, and going places, we could revisit that in several years. So any questions that I might answer in regards to that?
Do you know what your participation rate has historically been? How many young people?
Well, we have a lot that show up on the roll that they sign up the several weeks before the fair. We're working to change some of that. Last year we worked to try and get them to participate in so many meetings. We're really, and this is true across the state, we're really at very much a rebuilding stage. We have 2 county community clubs presently. Probably 20 or 30 kids active in those clubs, and that might be a stretch. When it comes to showing at the fair, we have, I think, upwards of 100 kids on the rolls. There will always be some of that, because to show at fair, they've either got to register as FFA or as 4-H. Some of what I would like to do, Chris and I have talked about this, and if we brought in a person, I really think as I look at our needs here in Searcy County, as I've been here about a year and a half and just looking, seems like our young people here do everything. You know, a lot of our young people, you try to run a program and they've got FFA and they're involved in this sports and they're involved in this club and they've got a lot going on. I really think one of the things we could do in this county, which would provide real opportunities, would be project clubs. Where if we had young people that were interested in livestock, there could be a livestock club. They wouldn't have the requirements to meet as many times a year, but they would have real focused education in those areas. We could have a carpentry club. We did a ribbon cutting recently on a trail, and we'd really like to bring some of these young people in and build benches and build picnic tables and do tree ID along this trail and have the 4-H kind of take ownership of this. You know, it's something that our community has. It's a beautiful trail. If y'all haven't checked it out, it's a really nice trail, worth looking at. Anyway, those are some thoughts on that. Did I address that question? Okay.
I'd like to say I've had a couple people contact me about this exact same thing. I think personally a lot of the participation is down because it's not real convenient for parents that work, because when Pam was in and my daughter was in 4-H, they could meet right after school. The 4-H advisor the school let them use a spot, and then, you know, you could come get your kids after you got off work. The meetings would last an hour, hour and a half. Well, now that it's really not in the school system, they're having to meet somewhere else. And so if you work in Harrison or you work in Clinton, you can't get your kids to a 4 or 5 o'clock meeting because you're not home. So I think that has hurt, I think that's hurt the, back to what you're saying, like how many active members, it's just not convenient right now. So to have somebody that maybe could work with the schools and try to get these programs back in to the schools and meet right after school's out, then parents can come and commute, get home, pick up their kids. I think it would allow more children to participate, but I think that's a huge hurdle right now is.
I appreciate you saying that too. We have actually met with our school superintendent. She's very much in favor of us bringing 4-H programs into the school. I think it would complement our FFA. You know, y'all have probably heard Daryl Treat did 4-H and FFA. I don't know if every kid's gonna do that, but we could really bring some things to these kids if we could come into the elementary schools and bring 4-H programs there. We would have some continuity in the clubs too, so I'm glad you brought that up, because that is something we've looked at as well, that if we had the staffing, we could do that, so.
And I know my granddaughters are in 4-H, but they have to come to Marshall to meet because we don't have anything north of the river. So if if you're not a stay-at-home parent, you can't get your kids over here for even a 5 o'clock meeting if you're driving from Harrison and don't get off until 5. It's just not as convenient.
Yeah.
So I think the numbers are low, and I think a lot of it is just due to that inability that it's not into the school systems and them being a part of helping grow that program.
I don't know why it affected this way too, but I mean, we really saw kind of a nosedive in COVID, and it's just never quite come back. I think if we did some things to encourage it, though, we could really grow it, and I think, there's a lot of potential in 4-H. These kids, a lot of scholarships for them, a lot of opportunities too. They discover things that maybe they didn't even know they had a passion for. And 4-H is a great place for them to discover that.
I think you need somebody to push it and run it, get it going back up.
Yeah.
Well,
That's a good idea.
Is this something we could look back at when we do
Well,
the prosecutors after maybe in February?
In keeping with continuity, since we have Mr. Chad here, who just, heard us say that we should wait and see what the carryover is, it would be,
Yeah,
I
that's
guess,
what I'm asking.
disingenuous to, grant this, and then, so I think what we should do, this is my opinion, is that we should wait and see what the carryover is.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
'Cause currently-
We were to ask him to come back in February when.
Currently, we have $309,000. If everything according to the, anticipated income for Fund 1000 holds true, and these budgets hold true, then there would be several $100,000 extra to play with, and I would definitely support this, but we probably should wait until, the first few weeks of January to see where we go.
That's fair.
But I definitely support it.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
I appreciate it, thank you.
And so we won't forget that you should come back in case we do.
Okay.
So if we
I'll
do
keep
the
coming
budget
back.
amendment-
Yes. So I guess the next step would be Mr. Cotton will wrap this all up into a very nice ordinance. And it will also include the, hours for each department. We'll make sure and knock that out in the next meeting, where every department's authorized to man hours. Because we had to come back, remember this year, we didn't get that when we passed the budget. Yes, that right there.
I've got a draft of that for each person, and then I have a draft of the ordinance based on what we've talked about tonight for each person to look at. And I'm ready to move forward with the ordinance and have it ready at your convenience.
So what would be a good meeting time, because we need 2/3 to pass it. So we need at least 6 of us who will be here for sure. Is that correct, Chad? We need 2/3
Correct.
to pass this, so we need to, how many of us can be where, when, and so, let's start throwing some
My
dates out
question
there.
before we get to that though is, if there's any numbers that we don't agree with tonight, is there?
Yes, we should talk about it tonight.
Okay, that's what I was,
You got something you wanna bring up?
I'm gonna go back to the jail. What was that, total? What they had requested was 585 something, is that right?
Yes, it was, but I'm not gonna give you all the cost. 585,746. And that's based on last year's budgeted request was 701.
And the decline is because some hours are being pushed over to 911.
Which helped.
Yes.
And other cuts, if you wanna look through it.
My feelings on that, you look at the anticipated and then you look at the 90% of that. And I understand that we're probably gonna have to help them again.
I don't think we will.
But if we do, I think we should help them then and not upfront, not add the 585
Well, the fund,
budget that.
the jail surplus fund, the several budgets I've worked on previous to this year, they over projected by 100,000+. So we really pressed on Mary Beth to make sure that did not happen here. And so what's left is, I think, a true number of what the general fund would be required to put in. And what will happen is that if we budget to his anticipated needs for man hours and supplies and equipment, I think that's probably a real number. It's just that they will be apportioned money throughout the year and not front end loaded, and that way they can pay attention
Yeah, I understand
to what's going on.
Year, but for this year.
And I think it will help drastically having other eyes.
But I'm
Monthly
if we
on
shrink
those
this a little
invoices.
more now, as to a budget now, then that might help.
I don't know
We
how
really
much-
need to keep an eye on this, and it's gonna be our job to do that.
Yes, sir.
Talking from the jail standpoint, not ours.
Well, there's some line items, I don't have that budget in front of me, that particular office, but if you have some line items that you would suggest that we could shrink, this would be the time to do it.
Well, I don't have anything like that to propose, but just, you know, bring it
'Cause a
down to
lot of these-
500,000.
Yeah, a lot of these that they got this year are down for next year. They've done they've done a lot of cuts. It may be $1,000, it may be $4,000, but I mean, there's just about the majority line items, just at a glance, looks like it's been cut something from this year's budget to next year's.
I'm definitely with you on this, and like a hawk, we need to watch it. And I'm not as positive and optimistic going into January that we're gonna be able to support this budget. And if that would be the time right then that we would come in and very surgically
Well,
reduce.
I was kinda sorta watching this year on that, but really, you know, what can we do? I mean, we've already said up front, here you can have X amount of dollars, and you're gonna come in later, once they spend nearly up to that, and say, oh, hang on a minute. I say now's the time to say, hang on a minute, you watch the money you've got, because that's the way I have to operate. You know, if I know that I've got $40 in the bank up front, and that's all I'm gonna have, then that's the way I budget.
I think the jail, the biggest,
And I understand.
the biggest draw for the jail is honestly, it's that manpower. And so as I would see it, let's say that we came into a situation where we had to like slice, then that's what you would do, is you'd have to attack that probably because the food budget was one of the high-end items, and they've already cut by $3,000. And I'll tell you, he was $40,000 or $50,000 in '22, and we cut him to 30, remember that? And he's managed to keep to that, so you're spot on, what you're saying is that, you know, you could, if you ease it back and force them to operate within the budget, but the hard thing for that jail is that a lot of that is manpower, and
Yeah, $461,500.
well, that's what you see there, and 911's got
Yeah.
more
And
manpower than
that's
that
not
one.
including, yeah, exactly.
So I remember a number of it being $570,000 for this year coming, going toward, manpower. And the only way to cut that would be to say you cannot have the jailers that the state requires you to have, and that may have to happen, you know, if the funds don't come in.
You're not meeting
So
other
I'd
option.
rather do something to help that now is to wait till later on. That's all I'm saying.
Michelle, you see anything on those lines?
No, it's down, what, 115,000 from last year. I mean, it looks like all this has been into consideration, you know, you look at their balance, for example, on general supplies. Last year they budgeted 8,000, they've got $4,464 in there, but they're asking for 5,000. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where, it looks like I said, the majority of these, other than the $500 ones, they've already been cut. 8,000 to 3,500, I mean, a lot of these have already been sliced, I don't know where else.
The big one's manpower.
Didn't we just to be at state regulations? Or
at the
last
be-
year or the year
the-
before?
Last year, and I believe it was the end of last year, Michelle, wasn't it, when we
Yeah, cause I don't think we've.
added
been
three, we
in
allowed three,
standards
we
since
allowed three
then.
extra people.
Yeah,
But it wasn't only that, those people were working themselves to death because they were shorthanded, with it being that they have both males and females in there. Had to have a certain level of staffing, and they were working extended hours, they were just.
and then there was no time to get any, they can't take any comp time because they're shorthanded.
Right, they were having
And they're
burnout
working
problems.
overtime,
And
and I
I
think
was-
12-hour shifts, so.
I've been told that that jail
Yeah.
is having a hard time staffing right now, that's a word that I heard. And here's a sad reality, is that nobody gets paid enough. I don't know how people are surviving, and that's the sick, sad reality.
That's why you don't keep employees, but
Right.
what do you do in your poor county? We do all we can do to give those raises, but they're never enough, I know. So, I don't see anything, Andy, anywhere else to cut. I don't know if you've looked at these line item by line item,
I have
but,
not.
I mean, everything has been already sliced and diced on their budget that they've turned in.
Should we get together on Christmas Day and have a quorum court meeting?
Pass.
They fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with
I
it.
think my Christmas Eve, so I'll be done Christmas Day.
Anybody wanna shoot a date out? How much time do you need to get this all put together? And we have so many days, I got a couple of days, not much, but, I mean, we have to let the public know.
What is the date?
Would we
And
be
the
enough?
civic
Yeah.
center number, where did the 92,000, why do they need so much money for that? What's that?
Their general
Bonders.
operating expense has been between 40 and 50,000 anyhow. They have lifeguards, just the keeping up the building, chemicals for the pool, ground maintenance, building. But the number that you're seeing there is the full-time individual that they have this year, and then they will be carrying it over into next year.
So we went from 17,000 a year is what they.
No,
used
sir,
to
it
put
was-
in, Is that right?
It was, I'm just top of my head, I'm just remembering these numbers, and I may be totally wrong, but I kinda remember it being around the $40,000 to $45,000 range, isn't that right? When the total budget for the year, last year, or the year before rather, before the full-time employee was there. I remember it being in the $40,000 to $45,000 range.
For electric, propane stuff,
And the county's always had to throw in about 20. I mean,
Road departments ate most of it, I think, in the past, hadn't they? When he paying it out of there, he put her over there, and then that was part of the deal. Which, what number is that, Mr. Andy?
You're talking about Civic Center?
1804.
1804.
I've heard a lot of things about the Civic Center. I've heard from government that the Civic Center is a drain on the public. But I look at it as the Civic Center is an asset to the public, because those kids, if they don't have a place to go, then they will find themselves in the parking lots and all that. At least here, it's a place for the families to come together and have picnics, and I've seen that Civic Center being used quite a bit.
stays busy.
It stays busy, and the usage of that Civic Center is up quite a bit over the last several years. However, the last several years was COVID, so I don't know if that's apples to apples. But,
So, 2023, it budgeted $74,093.34, with $49,500 roughly being personal services. So that was about $25,000, for everything else, it looks like.
I remember that number being for the 2 years previous, it being around 35 to 40. And I remember
Okay.
the general fund having to give the Civic Center, I don't know, $19,000 something like that.
That'd be a pretty tight budget right there.
Yeah,
But the increase you're seeing, it is the full-time individual.
which, I mean, if you're looking at $49,500 for that salary, and she's bringing in 35,000.
See, I don't-
We weren't getting any of that before.
I remember the salary being 28,000, what you're probably looking at also is part-time, which is,
Everything,
yeah, so you
everything,
have
all
about,
salaries.
you have about 12 to 15,000, which are
Full-time is
lifeguards.
29,120.
Yes, so she's only getting, that's only a $29,000 for a full-time staffer, plus taxes and retirement and all that. So what you're also seeing in there is, I don't know, 12 to 15,000 for lifeguards, I think is what I'm remembering. And so lifeguards alone account for more than half of what that full-timer is, costing that, Fund 1804.
And before she was in there, I think really the only income, well, the income that came in was like the pool, and it was the T-ball or the baseball, but like now we've got the weight room, I mean, there's parties, there's income coming in. Mary Beth said she's making deposits almost weekly.
So she's generating
And it's-
income.
Yeah,
So, some of that 28,000 is probably being offset by just the fact she is there, which maybe, I'm just gonna hazard $10,000, possibly could be what she's generating, her being here. And then you gotta look at the fact that the building itself is not being destroyed as often.
Yes.
And so that's kind of helping keep the thing, you're
Having
reducing
surveillance.
maintenance costs.
just having somebody there more.
And then there's something called blue sky, which you can't put a number to. It's just, what does it do to the county as a whole to have that civic center open to the public?
There's somebody walks every day, you know, with different stuff,
Well, and I've been up there when she's been painting or mop, or, you know, I mean, she's constantly getting it to be, I mean, I had a show there this year, and people were impressed, because they were there 2 years ago, and it was awful. The bathrooms was like walking into a murder scene, you didn't know if you were gonna be in the Psycho movie or not. They were dark, they were dingy, and now they're not.
Yeah, there's been a lot of work done over there.
I think, Andy, I think those are great questions. I think also something you talked about is innovation within the offices, you know, and so that's something that needs to be, I think going forward, you know, how to innovate, find better ways to get more done with less, is something that probably counties across the state are looking at. You know what I'm saying there, something that you brought up also, so that's a great point, a great question you're bringing to the Quorum Court.
And I think this is the first time I have looked at a budget, since I have been a Quorum Court member, that every budget has not matched to the penny anticipated. A lot of these budgets are coming in less than they're anticipated.
And what's
that
gonna-
means that people are thinking about it, they're putting some thought in it, they're not just, I want that anticipated so I can throw a number down on this budget and get what I can get.
And what's gonna be beautiful with the new
So-
ordinance is that the office holders are gonna be required to give to the clerk at the same time the treasurer is giving the anticipated, so you're not gonna be able to do that.
To marry them up.
No, but they're
Not
gonna have
ask
to
for what
actually
you
do the
need to run your
homework.
office, not what you think you need.
And I think that's gonna
Or
drive
what you need.
efficiencies there also.
Yeah. Does anybody have any options for a meeting so that we can see if we can pass this budget?
I say Christmas Day.
I was looking at like maybe Wednesday or Thursday next week.
Yeah, I was looking at Thursday.
Yeah,
the
I've got something
21st.
every single night besides Friday night this week.
How about the 21st?
How about the first meeting in January?
We would technically be violating the law.
You did it last year.
Trust me, it wasn't by choice. If I can choose not to do
I was here
it.
for the last one, I shouldn't have been.
Exactly, so, I mean, I would say one day next week. Wednesday's
have-
a church night.
We have to have quorum, I mean, like super majority, you gotta have, not just quorum, super majority, you gotta have at least 6 here. And so that's very important that we all marry our time line, because
Has anybody got stuff Monday, week from today?
I'll be out of town.
Or you just the rest of this week, is that what you're
The
saying?
rest of this week,
Okay.
I've got something every night except for Friday night, yeah.
what's today's date? The
The
11th?
I can be here anytime, so I don't care.
The only thing I can't be here is the 22nd.
How about the 26th, 27th, how about the 26th or 28th of December? Well, everybody's saying they can't be here next, some are saying we can't be here next week.
She'll be here Friday,
Either this Friday or any day next week.
any day next week.
What's everybody else look like next week?
I'm
You're,
I'm free on the 18th on the Monday, if everybody else is free.
I'm good.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you won't need me if everybody else is here.
Oh, yeah, we need you. Because what if only 5 people show?
Oh, they're gonna commit right now.
What if somebody catches COVID, you know? You gotta come.
What about those
pandemic no more?
Okay, what about the 19th, which is on Tuesday?
I'm going every week through the week. I make special appointments to be here for this.
Well, do we have enough people just in case Mr. Hinchy cannot be here? I'm sorry, Hinkle, sorry.
There's 7 technically,
Yeah,
not
Friday,
including
next-
Tim.
Next Monday?
On the 18th, I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
yes.
Yes. So there's
We can
3.
get all the regs
Danny,
and
can you be here?
available.
There's 4. Andy, can you be here next Monday?
That's a long way away. Thank you for me.
What's happened to Mr. Rick, by the way, does anybody know?
Mr. Rick is very sick tonight,
Is he?
but he has not sold his property yet, so he's,
Well, no, I know, he's missed it, and I'm concerned of it for his health. I knew he hadn't been feeling well.
Next Monday night.
so there's 3, 4, 5. Can you be here? 6, Jason, 7? And so I'm just gonna believe Rick can be here, so there'd be 8.
Can you be here, Chad?
The 18th at 7,
Yes, sir.
I can make that happen.
And I'm trying to be here.
Would you rather do Christmas Day?
You might take your vacation now.
I don't have anything else going, no. No, the 18th is, I can make it work. No.
Good deal.
So we'll put down for the 18th, and then, this will be the last budget committee meeting / JP's next year. The judge will appoint 5 more people, you guys will pick a chair, but I think that this, sets a good process forward. I think it's been very useful, you guys agree? I mean, it's kind of streamlined things and so,
Absolutely.
Thank you to everybody that's put in all the time and effort. Mr. Cotton, thank you.
I think that we're gonna have to, pull together early in January. I'm very concerned, we're gonna have to look at these budgets again, to your point. And so, then we may have to do exactly what you're saying at that point, but if the carryover is what it says it is, then we're gonna be good. We'll actually have a little extra money if the carryover is right.
I will tell you what Granny always said.
Yeah. It's for it to be so small, it has a lot of impact, I'm just saying.
So the 18th at 7 PM, right?
Budget meeting.
I say,
Run, Danny, run.
Past Danny's bedtime.
If y'all come by,